conducting this in English. I know two phrases in Swedish. Lasse taught me both of them. One is how to ask for beer at the beginning of the evening, and the other is how to ask for help back to my hotel room at the end of the evening. I just wanted to start by giving you a little bit of background on the region I look after, which is Europe. For those of you that aren't aware of ClearCube's background, but I'm very pleased to see a couple of repeat customers in the room, which is great. Our first installation in Europe was back in 2003, and I think our first installation in this region was with Carnegie in 2005. Since then we've gone on to help 174 organisations with centralising their PC architecture. That's across 16 countries, everywhere from Poland over there in the east, Sweden here in the north, the UK of course, and then down in the south, Portugal, Spain and Italy. Predominantly in financial services, but also in command and control and in the government space as well. For those of you that aren't too familiar with ClearCube as an architecture, I just want to touch on a few key points. Essentially it breaks down into four components, and those are a blade, which is effectively a PC in a different form factor. That blade sits within a chassis, and we have two different form factors depending on the type of organisation. We have a 3U form factor and a 6U form factor. That sits in your secure location, maybe a staging closet or a data centre, and then connects back to the end user over structured cabling, and we can deliver that remote experience over an analog type connection or over an IP connection with Teradici's PC over IP. And then one of the most important parts of the architecture is that can all be managed remotely via our central software suite with nothing more than a web connection. So that allows you to have your IT administration function remote from the data center itself, and obviously operating in remote time zones as well. Typically, a ClearCube customer or prospect is experiencing one of these five main issues. They may be concerned about security, and by that could be physical security, as in the hardware asset itself, or it could be data security, and that could be control over corporate information, or that could be issues with regarding to software being uploaded or downloaded, viruses for example, onto the network. Organisations we talk to are also concerned about availability, with PCs inherently being one of the least reliable components within your computing architecture. And if a PC is down, typically the application is down and the user's not being productive. Just by the very nature of a distributed environment, you have support and management headaches. Usually a support call means a trip to the desk, as I'm sure most of you are aware. That can be a problem. It's having the right staff available, being able to get to the desk quickly, being able to actually get access under the desk, and all those sorts of issues that brings about. From a user perspective, we generally tend to find, particularly if you have more than one PC, I know most of you are from a financial services background, in a trading environment you may have 3 or 4 PCs under the desk, and you have constraints such as physical space, heat, noise, access, all those sorts of things that actually impact the user as well. And then finally, everyone's under pressure to actually reduce the cost of supporting their user environment. So typically our clients are seeing 2, 3, 4, maybe in some cases 5 of these problems, and that's where ClearCube can really help. I'm using here the example of the trade floor, as you can see, but typically in terms of a work environment, as I said before, we've got multiple PCs taking up space, valuable real estate. They're creating lots of noise, they're creating lots of heat, and they're susceptible to damage. And not necessarily malicious attack, but quite simply being kicked, sucking up dirt and dust from the floor, and inherently becoming unreliable. And there's also a lack of control. By control, that could be where the asset physically is, particularly if we're talking about laptops, or it could be some users actually physically connecting USB devices, or in some cases, some of our clients taking the lid off and adding their own graphics cards. All those sorts of things, can happen if the PC is out of your control. So we've worked very hard as an organisation to create what we see as the ideal user environment. And we've teamed up with desk suppliers, we've teamed up with intelligent switch manufacturers to really be able to provide a solution through our partners such as ITF, where we can help you in your environment to really improve that user workspace. And you can see here we've got a desk. This is actually built for a proof of concept for a customer in the UK. We've got a desk there. This particular desk is by Technology Desking. We also work with manufacturers such as SBFI, which I believe Carnegie uses. And you can see very clearly here that what we've done is remove all the PC architecture from the desk space. That's actually allowed us to reduce the desk format. That in fact is a 48-inch desk, which in Swedish money is 1.2 meters, I think. And in that 1.2 meter space, as you can see, we've got 8 22-inch wide screens, all controlled by one desktop switch here. It's an intelligent desktop switch. That's going back to 3 PCs. You can see the user ports actually here within the turret channel underneath the desk. The desk lifts up here, and then we bring the USB and keyboard up to the desk point itself here. And it's an intelligent switch. Wherever you're pointing your mouse, that's actually giving you the keyboard access to that point there. So we've picked all that equipment up, we've put it all back in the data center. What does that mean? Well, it means that you've got your PCs are now in a lockdown environment, very much in the same way as all your other server equipment is. It also means you can start regulating access to mass storage devices. And all of this helps with meeting your regulatory compliance obligations with such things as SOX. And it's also much easier for you to manage power and cooling. You've moved the problem, but you've moved the problem into an environment where it's inherently easier to control. What does that mean for you as an IT department? Well, it means you can execute. I've been asked to explain that we're an American IT company, so we love abbreviations. So MAX is being moves, adds, and changes. So it allows you to do those in a much more controlled environment. It allows you to do that from using central software. It also means you can now start to upgrade. When we talk to a lot of our customers, they generally don't go out to the desk to upgrade PCs because it's so difficult to manage, whether it's a software upgrade or whether it's physically putting more memory in the machine or something like that. Typically it's not done. Typically the PC will have a 2 or 3 year lifespan and then it'll get thrown away and you'll buy a new PC. What you'll tend to find when you start looking at an environment which is housed within your data center is you can start to sort of say, well, we can plan for physical upgrades. It means you're no longer running out to the desk. And it also means you can start thinking about a much more effective disaster recovery plan. So think, for example, that maybe you've got 4 or 5 offices globally. No longer do you need 4 or 5 data centers. You can start thinking about consolidating those data centers. So what does this all actually mean? Well, we're doing a proof of concept right now with a very large American investment bank. And these are their figures, they're not my figures. What they've managed to achieve, or think they can achieve through looking at ClearCube over one of our major competitors in the market, is a 30% reduction in desk space. And that's very important when they're looking at putting 4,000 traders in one building. That amounts to a really big cost saving in terms of real estate. They've also found a 52% reduction in power consumption. And this really is because we've thought about the design of our blades, and Randy's going to talk a little bit about this particular blade in a moment. But what that means in real terms is 415 watts of consumption per trader as opposed to 1,068 for our nearest competitor. That's a 52% reduction. It's also a 50% reduction in data center space. You'll see how dense this solution is shortly. And that means we can get 32 users per rack as opposed to 16 users. And with our new R3040 blade, we're looking at 512 cores per rack as opposed to 256 cores from the other vendor they were looking